interesting couple of years. Thank God we are on what feels like another side.
What was it, March 16th? 14th. 2020.
The weekend, everything changed.
Yeah.
Because Dory became a man.
It literally was.
Yeah. Right, talk about last hurrah.
So, I always look up at our stained glass window, which you'll be able to see with more splendor tomorrow morning. But that little rainbow there from the Noah story of, the rainbow being the symbol of, as Bob Marley put it, every little thing's going to be all right. And, looking up there every so often and feeling like every single little thing is getting all right, and to have your bar mitzvah, Braden, this weekend is one of those symbols that kind of hits me with a ton of bricks. So I am very happy to be celebrating with all of you this weekend.
So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is lovely to be with you, and we will welcome the Millers when they get here and family. And we will get started on page 4. And as we move into our service and we prepare to welcome Shabbat, one of the ways that we do that is by creating a little bit more light. And so I want to invite the Levintons to come on up to light our Shabbat candles for us, if you will. And we will say the blessing together. And as we do that, with every little step of the way, we'll kind of be slowly settling into Shabbat here together, and to allow us to really settle into this space and to breathe in the peace and light of Shabbat. Come on up. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shalom. So Braden, I'm going to ask you to go over and join Cantor Benjamin over there, and the rest of y'all can have a seat. And we're going to turn to page 5 as we move into Shalom Aleichem. And when we say the words of Shalom Aleichem, we are saying, welcome to the angels of Shabbat. May we be blessed with these visitors. And may we be blessed in their coming, blessed in our time to get to spend time together, and blessed in their leaving and in their parting. And I hope, Braden, that you are blessed with many friends and family who you'll get to spend time with over the course of this weekend. And I am sure that they will feel blessed by seeing you, and I hope that they bring good blessings to you as well. Page 5. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh, Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzechem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thank you, Braden. You can have a seat. And we continue on page 10 with Yadid Nefesh.
Yadid Nefesh Av HaRachaman Mishuch Avtach El Retzonach Yarutz Avtach Imu Yishtachaveh mul hadarach ki ye'erav lu bedidutach minofet tzuf v'chotam Adonai Ziv ha'olam Nafshi cholat ahavatach Ahana ena refana la beharot la lo amzivach az titchazek v'titrapeh v'hayetalach shivkad olam Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai dai Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai dai Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai dai.
As we move through Kabbalat Shabbat, this section of the service is meant to help us kind of settle into Shabbat, to look back on the busy week that we've had, to appreciate all the joy that came to us this week, to let go of things that maybe were more difficult or weren't serving us as well, and to be able to appreciate where we are as we move into Shabbat. It's such a gift that we have this kind of period of time every single week. On the one hand, we just came off of our high holidays, our sort of big once-a-year event where we all come together in different ways with friends or with family or in community to pray or special meals at home or break fasts. And we have that sort of once a year kind of experience. And then on the other side, we have Shabbat, which is every single week. Every single week we have this opportunity to pause, to appreciate where we are in our lives, and to express gratitude for all of that. And so as we move into Shabbat, I want to invite you to take a minute to think back on the week that has passed. And if there's anything that is feeling particularly joyful, particularly special that you want to make sure to take with you as you enter into Shabbat, think about that for a moment. And if there's anything that you want to share with the rest of us, we'd love to be able to share in your joy as well. Cantor Benjamin?
This is the first Shabbat since before High Holidays where it's actually been a Shabbat for you and for me, where we really get just Shabbat, and there's really nothing after it. It's just a beautiful, wonderful Shabbat. We don't have
Some
a
other
holiday.
big giant hug
We
coming.
don't have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, or Simchat Torah to look forward to. We just have this Shabbat.
Amen.
And after the month of, the marathon that is Tishrei for a rabbi and a cantor, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful Shabbos.
Yes, indeed. Anyone else want to share something you're thinking of in this moment? I'm grateful that my friend over there, I'm going to embarrass you for a moment, is visiting from Boston. And always a joy to get to spend time with folks who don't live as close as they once did, and to get to spend some special time together. So I will invite you to continue to think about this question, and maybe you don't want to share aloud. Maybe you'll share with a loved one later, or just think about it for yourself, because I do really love this gift that we have every single week to not just allow time to pass by without really noticing, but to really get that sort of punctuation at the end of every week, to pause, to notice, to appreciate, and to set our sights on the week ahead in case there's adjustments that need to be made, or that there's something new that we want to try in our lives. So we'll continue on page 14 at the red arrow. Yismechu hashamayim, the heavens shall be glad and the earth rejoice, the sea and its fullness roar, the meadows and all that grows in them exalt. And as we sing these words this week on Parshat Bereshit, I have a different appreciation for thinking about what it means for the earth to rejoice and the sea to be in its fullness, as we'll be reading tomorrow about the moment when perhaps all of these things were brought forth for the first time.
Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tayeh haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tayeh haaretz. Yeram hayam, yeram hayam, yeram hayam umelu. Yeram hayam, yeram hayam, yeram hayam umelu.
Continue on page 16, 4 lines up from the bottom in the Hebrew and in the transliteration.
Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy yishrei lev simcha.
You turn now to page 23 for Lecha Dodi, and I invite Braden to come up on the bima to help lead us in this prayer. And in the words of Lecha Dodi, we think about welcoming Shabbat each week as if we are welcoming a bride, and the same sort of excitement that we might imagine when we are attending a wedding, or even more so if you're looking at your beloved coming towards you. That's what we're hopefully supposed to feel each and every week as we enter into Shabbat. So sometimes you have really special things happen on Shabbat, like, a bar mitzvah. And so maybe you can feel a little bit about what that excitement might be like. But even on the plain old Shabbats in our lives, we're supposed to sort of see if we can find and muster that same sort of excitement. So Braden will lead us on page 23.
Doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, U'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litchilah. Lecha doti, Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki hi mekor habracha, Merosh mikedem nisucha, Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tehila. Lecha doti, Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech ir melucha, Kumitza'ir mitoch ha'hafecha, Rav lach shevet be'emek habacha, Vehu yachmol alayechem la. Lecha doti, Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
We continue on page 25 with the second paragraph.
Yamin usmol tifrotzi, V'yet Adonai ta'aritzi, Al yad ish ben partzi, V'nismecha v'nagila. Lecha doti, Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
We rise and we face the door if we're comfortable and able to do so, as we symbolically welcome our Sabbath Queen.
Bo'ir v'shalom ateret ba'ala, Gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, Toch emunei am seula, Bo'ir chala. Lecha doti, Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha doti likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
You may be seated. Thanks, Braden. We continue on page 27 with a psalm for Shabbat.
Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai. Azam Mission Yana Hagibo,
We continue with the red arrow on page 28.
Tzadikat Yifrach Ke'erez Bavanun Yizkeshetulim Bavit Adonai Bechatzrut Eloheinu Yafrichu Od Yenuvun Beseva Deshenim Rananim Iyu Lehayid Yashar Adonai Tzuri Tzuri Velo Avlatambo.
We flip ahead now in our Siddur to page 39 as we move into the evening service, our Marif service. And I invite you to rise once again, if you're comfortable and able to do so, for Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Umavir ben yomer en laila, med yomer en laila, rai tzvot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chalein le'elam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hamari v'aravim.
We turn to the top of page 40 for Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat olam mid Yisrael, Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbeinu uvkumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Hihem chayenu v'yorech yameinu, v'yorech yameinu, uvahem neye yomam v'layla, yomam v'layla v'yamcha. Azasim Emenu Le'olamim, Baruch Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
We turn to page 41, and I invite Braden to come back up on the bima to help lead us in Shema and V'ahavta.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavecha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol miodecha, v'hayu advarim ha'ela, asher nuchi v'zavecha, hayom alevavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha v'beitecha, v'lechtecha v'derech, v'shochvecha v'fumecha, Ushatam liyot hayadecha, ולטורפות בעיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
We continue silently at the top of page 42. Thanks, Braden.
Adonai Elohechem emet.
Continue on page 44.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחרו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה מלכותך רובנך בקיים לפני משה זליון ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדר את יעקב וגלום יד חזק ממנו ברוך את אדוני גאל ישראל.
We turn to page 45 for Hashkivenu, where we talk about God's Sukkot Shalom kind of spreading over us and over all the people in the world. And, we can look out back and we still have our Sukkah up here at BTBJ, and I know I still have mine up at home as well. We'll get around to, taking it down before it becomes a Thanksgiving hut, I'm sure. But we say this prayer every night, and we are reminded of this kind of symbol of a Sukkah all year long, not just once a year during the holiday of Sukkot. And so on Sukkot, we put up this physical structure to be reminded of our vulnerability and the ways in which we can look to God for protection. But we say this prayer every single night, and every night we can also be reminded of the ways in which we can maybe not have that physical structure, but that we can still pray for that kind of peace and protection over us and over all who are in need. So as we sing the words 3 lines down, Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, spread over us your canopy of peace, I invite you to hold in your mind and in your hearts all those who might be in need in this moment of that kind of peace and protection, maybe from something small or maybe from something really big. And we'll send our prayers to everyone who we hold in our hearts at this time.
Ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha baruch Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim.
We turn to page 46, and I invite Braden to come back up onto the bima to help lead us in Vishamru.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'ris olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam oti leolam oti leolam Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'ris olam Yisheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
יתגדל
ויתקדש שמי רבה,
Amen.
ועמד דברה קירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לימי ימיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה, ויתעלה, שמי לקודשה ברכו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא ואמרו
Amen. We turn to page 47. Thank you, Braden. And I invite you to rise if you're comfortable and able to do so as we move into our Amidah. And in the evening, our Amidah is silent, which means that this is a moment for us to possibly take time to move through our Siddur with the prayers in Hebrew or in English, to take some time to take in the commentary or the poetry that surrounds our ancient words, and also to take a moment to just recognize the prayers in your own heart. And we'll come back together at the end.
יקרא ויגרש מרפא, ויאמר ברכרתי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה וזמגריבים אמרו, אמן, יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם לימי ימיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי לקודשה ברכו. Le'el mikol bechata v'shurat shtush bechata v'nechem matadam yaram yama v'imru. Amen. Tikabal salot hol miyotachon d'cho Yisrael kodam avahol v'shmai v'imru. Amen. Yehi shalom ra v'shamai v'chayim alo kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom rumav v'yaseh shalom alo kol Yisrael kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
So we have a lot of parshiot, a lot of different Torah portions in our Torah. And when we come to B'nai Mitzvah around Leviticus, around Deuteronomy, the stories are interesting. There's a lot of laws, a whole lot of laws. And sometimes, the conversations that we have together when we're learning our Torah portions can sometimes be a little interesting and maybe sometimes hard to find meaning for today's world. And then we get Genesis, the book of Bereshit, which is so beautiful and so full of just wonderful imagery and all of these stories which are familiar in so many ways to us. And perhaps none are more familiar than the ones that we have this week and next week. Bereshit, the story of the creation of the world, and then Parshat Noach, which we'll read next week, which people are so familiar with, the story of the flood and the first rainbow and the dove and all of that. So we are in kind of like the best place in Torah right now. And when you come tomorrow morning, you'll see that we're at the very, very, very beginning, which is also just so incredibly special. And so, Braden, I hope you feel very lucky to have your bar mitzvah on this particular weekend. So, as we read the story of creation, and as we talked a little bit together, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, when we read the story of creation, we actually just referenced it in Vishamru. We reference this story in so much of our liturgy. We reference the moment of creation when we say our Friday night Kiddush, which we'll do in just a little bit, in the words of Vishamru. We reference it all the time. And when we talk about it, we sort of say, 6 days the world was created, on the seventh God rested. And we know that there's a particular order to all the different things that were created, and we'll get to read about that tomorrow, since we'll be reading each of those days right from the beginning of Torah. And so we won't go over all of that right now. But we also, what I will talk a little bit about more tomorrow, is that the story of creation, as you really look at it in Torah, is kind of straightforward on the one hand. Like on the first day there was this, and the second day there was this, on the third day there was this. But then it also seems like there's like a few different creation stories that are happening all within the one parsha. And you see this especially when it comes to the creation of human beings. So we have a few different creation stories within even this parsha. Then we go on and have even more stories that our rabbis kind of tell, that become midrashim, that become kind of stories about the story. And then for generations, this pivotal moment in our world and in our existence ends up with just even more layers of interpretation, of trying to understand how it is that we're supposed to make sense out of any of this, and what is it that how are we supposed to kind of understand how this maybe came to be in the first place. So one of my favorite versions, I guess, or telling sort of understandings of how it is that we even got to that moment of creation, because you can easily ask the question of, okay, God said, Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created, but we might say well, what happened before that? Was God just sort of sitting around, watching TV, having some popcorn, and then kind of woke up and said, let's create a world? What was God doing before that? So one of my favorite stories about this is from Rabbi Isaac Luria, who is a 16th century Kabbalist who lived in Sfat, which is also where the L'chadodi prayer that we said earlier, where it's also kind of his world where that grew out of as well. So his story goes a little something like this. At the beginning of time, before we even get to that Bereshit bara Elohim, that God's presence just filled the entire universe. And when I say universe, I mean what we imagine as universe and what he imagined as universe are probably, potentially, very different things. We know so much more now. But God's presence filled all that there was. So when God decided to bring the world into being, Bereshit bara Elohim, God needed to somehow make room for there to be something other than God. Because up until then, God was kind of referred to as what Kabbalists will refer to as Ein Sof, sort of without end. It was this sort of infinite infinite presence in the world. So in order for there to be anything else, God needed to pull back. And this process of contracting God's self is known as tzimtzum. And so God kind of made a little space and somehow pulled back a little bit in the world, and then began what we'll read tomorrow, the story of creation. God said, "Let there be light," and the light came to be. And as the light came into being, it filled the darkness. So all of a sudden, there wasn't just darkness, there was light, and then we had sort of darkness and contrast. And, we sort of had the beginning of the world. And in this beginning, as this light was being created, this was sort of the primordial light of God. And it was not just like, a lamp that we might have that might just sort of help us to see, but it was this very intense light. It was God's light. And so as the light was being created, God somehow encased this light into these vessels. And so there were these vessels that kind of contained God's light that kind of went out into the world. And all would have been well. All would have been good if only those vessels were strong enough to contain God's light. But it's God's light after all. It's kind of strong. So as the vessels went out, they all shattered. And as they shattered, the light kind of went everywhere. And you can kind of picture it in your mind, like rays of light, sparks kind of just going everywhere in the world. It's like the sand of the sea. You can imagine it like the stars and like the perfect kind of sky. Hard to see where we live in the city, but imagine kind of being out. I was just talking to someone who was saying how much they love going on cruises because you get to really just like see all the stars in the sky. So it's kind of like that. There's just like little specks of holiness everywhere. So Luria taught that all of those specks of light that kind of go out into the world, that they wanted to be together once they were all together. And so our job in our world, and the whole purpose of our creation, is to now go on a quest to search for these sparks, to find these sparks and to redeem them, to kind of raise them up, to kind of send them back to that original God before it was all shattered. And this is our work in the world. And when Luria talked about this, he talked about this as a repair, as a tikkun of all of those sparks. And this is the original place where we hear the phrase tikkun olam, which nowadays we might be familiar with because we talk about that a lot. And when we think about that, is kind of thinking about how we can make the world a better place and how we might care for one another. But for Luria, it was really about kind of raising up these sparks. And so these sparks are found everywhere, in every person, in every animal, in every plant, everything that we encounter in our world. We are all kind of God's essence sort of clothed in our beings. And so these sparks kind of are the vitality that sort of illuminates the entire world. It's even actually, I remember learning one of these texts in rabbinical school, it's even in our food. And one of the ways that we can, did you learn this one? One of the ways in which we can release the sparks from our food is by saying blessings. That's part of why we say blessings before and after. We say the blessing before to kind of release the spark, and we say the blessing after to kind of allow it to digest in our bodies so that it can really like do whatever it needs to do in the world. So we have these sparks in everything. And so as I said, sometimes we think about tikkun olam as sort of like the good deeds that we can do in the world, and that is really important. The mitzvot that we can do to care for one another and to kind of make the world a better place. But for Luria, the purpose of tikkun olam wasn't just about doing nice things for other people. It was also about kind of contributing to the work of healing the entire universe, to be able to kind of perfect creation once again. So we learned in Pirkei Avot that, Rabbi Tarfon says, this is a very famous line from Pirkei Avot, that it's not our task to complete all of the work that needs to be done in the world, but neither are we free to desist from it. We have to take part in it some way, somehow. We have to find whatever that thing is for us that is going to kind of get us excited to help others and to find something that we can do in the world. And we can see from Luria's story that we're not intended to raise up all of the holy sparks, because when we think about and we look around at all that is kind of broken in our world, it can sometimes really get us down. I don't know if you've watched the news recently, but when you watch it, it's like there's just one bad thing after another. And it can start to feel like, how can I even make a difference? How can I begin to kind of ease the pain and the suffering that's happening in the world? But what we can learn from Luria is that, and from Rabbi Tarfon, is that we're not meant to fix everything in one foul swoop, nor are we meant to pick up all of the holy sparks, any one of us, and in any one moment. But the job is that each and every one of us, in every moment that we're able, to sort of uncover one of those holy sparks and to be able to do what we can in our little corner of the world to make things a little bit better, to make them right, to make them more just. And if each of us did that, if every single person in the world did that, even some of the time, to kind of take care of our own little corner of the world, how much better, how much more peaceful, how much more beautiful might our world be, how much more perfected. So as we move into Shabbat, and as we will read tomorrow some other versions of our creation story, may we each have the clarity and presence that as we move about our lives and in the world, to notice the sparks that present themselves in front of us, so that we can do what we can do to help raise them up, to redeem them. And may we each be able to do our part in that way, to each and every day, to make the world a better place. So Shabbat Shalom. And as I said, this is one of the most exciting parshiot of the year. So I'm excited to get to read a little bit of it tomorrow together, and to get to talk through some of the other pieces that we can notice of what's there and also what's not there in our text, based on some of the other things that we may have heard about the story of creation before. So we'll continue with our service on page 55. And I want to invite Braden to come on up to help lead us in Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav baratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila למקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, קילבנו בחרת ואותנו הקדשת בכל העמים, ששבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן.
We turn to page 56, and I invite you to rise for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשה כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו כחומונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. We turn to page 58 for Kaddish Yatom. And we remember all those who have passed on recently and all those who have passed on at this time in years past. This week in our community, we observed the yard sites of Shirley Belkoff, Thelma Bernstein, Bernice Denenberg, Ruth Elson, Theodora Fetter, Harry Fisher, Pamela Friedrich, Leslie Frischman, Jean Gallup, Stacy Gittleman, Fanny Goldstein, Esther Green, Harriet Hoffman, Mary Kaplan, Blossom Kaufman, Max Klavansky, Goldie Kivnick, Claire Licht, Jack Litt, Mariana Nemchek, Sydney Swartz, and Seymour Tucker. Are there any other names that you would like to share of someone you are remembering today? I invite you to do so. I'll ask those who are in mourning or who are saying Kaddish or observing a yard site to please rise, along with all those who wish to rise in support of the mourners or for those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. Yitzgadal, Yitzkadash, Shmei Rabbah, V'yalma Divra Kirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon V'yomechon Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uv'izman Kari V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam U'lomei Omaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar V'yitale V'yithalal Shemei Tekudesha B'richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Da'amiran V'yalma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabbah Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. You're the one who creates peace on high, bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all who dwell on earth, and we save together. Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. So, tomorrow morning, some exciting things happening. We'll join back here together at 9:30 as we celebrate as Braden becomes bar mitzvah. So we look forward to seeing you all again bright and early tomorrow morning. And we have many things coming up in our congregation. This Sunday, Cantor Benjamin will begin teaching a course to help folks who might be interested in learning how to lead a minyan to kind of take the first steps to begin to do that. But it's not only for those who wish to, one day work alongside Bert as our gabbai. It is also a great place for folks who just might want to know a little bit more about why we do some of the things that we do and what some of our prayers are about. So we'll kind of have some different conversations over the course of the year, and we hope that you might consider joining us for some of them or for all of them. Come whenever you would like. We also, does not apply to the Leventon family, but there's a B'nai Mitzvah orientation on October 26th. Been there, done that, but we'll see you all there if you're able to come.
Been there, done that, got the kippah.
Exactly. Got the kippah to prove it. And so that's at 7 p.m., and that's in person. And then there's actually, on the following Sunday on October 30th, I know you guys don't come to Hebrew School on Sundays anymore, but there's a parenting program from our Congregational Learning Committee that should be really great. It is helping children navigate through anxiety and social media. And it is, we have some professionals coming that one of our members had the opportunity to work with while she was working at Camp Harlem this summer. And so they'll be coming to have this conversation with us. And so I think that it should be really valuable. And for kids of all ages, really, I know that it's something that I've talked to folks, more with parents of teens, but I think it really applies for parents of kids of all ages. So we'd love for you to stop by. There'll be breakfast, and it's right after Minyan at 10. So lots going on, plus our fundraiser on the 5th of November, which should be super fun. If you didn't buy your tickets, we encourage you to do so. There's going to be music and food and fun.
October 27th, I am doing my first of the year-long series in choral music and in musicals. Next week's is going to be Haydn's oratorio, The Creation. So delving into Genesis 1 and a little bit of Genesis 2 as well. I tried to...
For some timely Torah.
Yes, timely Torah through music. So.
Awesome. So we will close tonight with a blessing for each of us. So it is a tradition on Friday nights for parents to have an opportunity to bless their children. And it can also just be a great time to think about the loved ones in your life, whether they are sitting next to you or whether they are somewhere else. Feel free to put your arms around one another if you wish, or just think loving thoughts of one another. And you girls can come up if you want. Do you want to come up? You don't have to. Okay. And we offer you a blessing.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God bless you and protect you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha.
May God's face give light to you and show you favor.
Yisar Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May God's face be lifted toward you and bestow upon you peace. Ki mihi ratzon, may it be God's will. My family, we also add, be who you are and be blessed in all that you are and all that you will become. Shabbat shalom.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom.